9:06, we'll call the meeting to order. Just before we begin, just some housekeeping quickly. Bathrooms are downstairs for anyone who hasn't been here before. There's a sign-up sheet that was in the back, and I think it'll make its way around. If everyone could sign in, that would be great. Also, feel free to check off any volunteer opportunities while you're signing in. If you have questions for the folks in the room, and thanks for coming, this is a great turnout, Jane has a microphone and she'll walk around to you, so if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll try to do questions after each section, but definitely raise your hand and Jane will walk up to you. You gotta hold the mic close to the mouth for everybody to be able to hear. We tested yesterday and everybody except for George really requires the microphone to be close to the mouth. If you're on Zoom, we're monitoring the chat, so please put your questions directly in there. We will do our best to monitor. It looks like we have about 20 people on Zoom right now, which is great. Just a big thank you to Will and Okemo Valley TV for helping us stream this, and to the town of Ludlow for offering the auditorium. This is a great venue for us, so we appreciate everybody's partnership on that front. So just to kick this off, thanks again for everybody for coming and spending part of your Saturday. We know there's a lot of places you could be at this time. My name is Spencer Rubin. I'm co-president along with George Thompson, going into year 2 here for the two of us. And we very much appreciate everybody's time. Just wanted to quickly introduce the board, or those who are currently seated up here. Starting down here, we have Jane Simon. Amit Khanna is, he is there. I couldn't, you were hiding. Rick is just such a large and tall gentleman, I couldn't see him. Amit Khanna, Rick Bauerfeld, Jackie Tong, who's up there navigating our tech challenges. George Thompson, as we said, Natalie Fisher, and Gigi Katzif. These guys work so very hard. As everybody knows, this is a volunteer organization. It is very much you put in, it's a lot of sweat equity. There's a ton of hours. Every email you guys receive, every social update, every event that is put on, every grant that is written, every component of everything that kind of the LRA stands for is done by these folks, in odd and off hours. And so I think they certainly deserve a giant round of applause, but I'm very appreciative of all the work that everybody does. They're great.
And I'd like to also just add that we're all ready to get off the board, so if anybody out there wants to get on the board, let us know, and we can sub you right in.
Well, you make it sound so fun, George.
Well, it is. Donuts, coffee.
Well, on that note, I'd like to also just specifically call out George. I feel like George and I talk every day now, which is nice for me, probably not as nice for him, but George sits on like 17 different boards here in Ludlow and the surrounding towns, and I'm very appreciative of the effort that George puts in, because he really is somehow tireless. I also just want to quickly thank the volunteers who spend their time helping at different events, specifically Barb Silver and Sharon Fleischer, who give a ton of time throughout the year planning the July 4th picnic and other events. We wouldn't be where we are without the volunteers, so we'll get into that later, but please do volunteer with us. All right, so I think in terms of, who's driving? We're gonna slide 2 things here. We're going to run the meeting a little bit differently today than we have in the past. I think the goal is to spend, we lost our slides. Thanks, Will. Take your time. Awesome, thank you. We're going to structure this a teeny bit differently this year. The goal really is to spend as much time as we can on our speakers and the topics that are so important to everybody. We'll try to get through the business of the association rather quickly. Obviously, if there were any questions, we're happy to go deeper. But I think just given the conversations that we've had with everybody over the last certainly 3 or 4 months, it feels prudent to spend as much time with our excellent guests as much as we possibly can. Our goal today is really to have everybody leave with a better understanding of the issues that face the lakes. We will not solve anything today. We may not solve anything tomorrow, but we will do the best we can to be able to try to arm everybody with the information needed and give the LRA the next steps that we need to try and get things back online and sustain kind of what we all love as best we can. So that's our goal, is to leave with a better communal understanding of the issues that face us and what we can do to try to get ourselves in a better place. So what we'll do is just jump over. We start, I think we start these meetings with kind of the who we are and who we aren't. We've done that for the past couple of years. The reason I bring this up is really the purpose of the association. And by the way, this is the 93rd annual meeting, which is incredible. We are a very small part of the history here. But the mission really is about being stewards for the lake, preserving the lakes that we all love, and really trying to grow our community and relationships within the town and surrounding areas. What we are not, right? We are not a regulatory group. We cannot enforce any sort of laws. We certainly liaise with the state and the town, but we are not, we don't manage the lakes. The state runs the lakes. We do everything that we can do from our position, but we certainly get our fair share of phone calls asking us to try to report people on doing certain things. That's not really who we are. We are really here to try to help inform everyone as best as we can. So just keep that in mind as we go through kind of what we are and what we're not able to do. But we will do our best to get through it all together. Flip to the next slide, Jackie. So, like I was alluding to, over the last few months, we certainly had an increased inbound in communications around, the excessive growth of milfoil, significant sedimentation buildup, obviously the water quality after storms, and a lot of questions around, well, what are you guys going to do about this? What are we going to do about this? Again, our goal really is to understand kind of where we sit today, the reality of where we are, and then what we can do to try to help collectively make this a little bit better. There's a lot of opinions out there. I think everybody's got really good opinions. I probably have some very bad opinions, but there are some opinions out there. We are going to have the experts give us their opinions, which are less opinions and more fact-based, which I think will be very important as we all try to tackle this together here. So, if you can flip the next one, sorry, Jackie. Great. The state of our lakes. The reality is everything's really beautiful, right? We have an incredible community that has grown over the last few years. The volunteers around Green Up Day and the picnic and collecting milfoil fragments, and we've got a really strong community. And the partnerships we've developed with the town and different businesses in town is continuing to grow, and I'm incredibly optimistic just about the kind of future of how we are building this together. The challenges we talked about before are very real, and while we are making progress, we have significant work to do going forward, but we have to also take the good with the bad. And the good is that things are looking more and more beautiful every year, and I think the town has done a wonderful job of trying to help us prepare for storms and the like. And so while there's certainly some challenges that we're facing, I think there's a lot of really good stuff that's happening, and want to not forget that part. So what we'll do now quickly is kind of hit the so-called business of this. We'll kind of each take a few of these and just do a really quick update on some of the areas that we've been focused on the last year. First and foremost, so we will be launching at some point in the next week a new website. I don't think there's a person in this room that has not reached out to us with frustration over Neon, which is our back-end CRM system for how we manage our memberships. I, for one, have a real, if anyone works for Neon, I apologize, but I have a real problem with the platform. We're changing that over to a new company called Wild Apricot. All of that will be done over the course of the next week or so. The new website, I think, looks really great. It will be much more intuitive for how you can log in and get information. And Wild Apricot as a membership platform will be a lot easier for you to manage your memberships. It will be no longer like individual members. You'll be a family pod. And there'll be one primary person that's responsible for paying the dues, but you can put up to 10 people on that account, and your whole family can get every email. So it's going to be a lot more clean in terms of how you can search member directories and engage with members. So I'm really excited about that. We'll get to what the step of moving you all from Neon into that platform is. We'll make it as clean as possible, but really excited about that, and appreciate the board's support as we went through that process. Rick, do you want to talk a little about membership?
Sure. Just as a reminder, we have two types of members in the association. We have full members, and to be eligible to be a full member, you have to be in the Lake District or within 200 feet of the Lake District, which brings pretty much everybody who has lake access in, and anybody else can become a friend of the lake. And really all you have to do is sign up and pay your dues. Now, the board is working hard to try to expand our membership because, as you'll hear in a bit, the things we're dealing with, particularly with respect to the sedimentation issues, is a big issue. We have to deal with the state and surrounding towns as well as our own town. And it really helps to have a lot of members. You don't have to do anything. So I encourage you, if you have neighbors or friends who aren't members, I mean, we love to have active members, but if you just sign up and people pay their dues, we'll be able to say, we're speaking for, X number of people. So we're working hard on that. So one of the things we've done is we've created a list using the information available on the web, and there are 326 properties where people are eligible to become full members. Unfortunately, the snail mail addresses are out of date, so we're working to, compare various sources to bring that up to date so we can reach out to people who are not members but eligible by snail mail. The other thing we're doing in order to try to increase the Friends of the Lake is we're trying to get a larger footprint in town. So we had a booth at the farmers market, and I guess just last night we had a booth up at the Jackson Gore concert, and we found that there's a lot of support in town for the lakes. There are people who use the lakes or appreciate that it brings business into town. So we're working hard to do that. Yeah. So I just, again, appeal to you to try to get people who are not members to sign up. There's really, all you have to do is pay, and it's really helpful. You don't have to agree with everything, but when we talk to the state and the town, it helps that we would represent a lot of people. It's something the other lakes right along the Black River don't have that we do have.
Great. You want to talk community? Or brand, sure. Yeah, Jane, you want to talk about the rebrand?
Sure. So you've probably all noticed, sorry. We have a beautiful new logo that is on our summer merch, and it will be on all future stuff. We worked with an artist in New Jersey who donated her time and services and expertise to develop the logo. And we just wanted it to represent all the things we love about the two lakes, and the Red Bridge is kind of what connects the lakes, so that's featured prominently. And we're really excited about it and hope you all love it too.
Jane did an excellent job. It was a lot of work to go through that process, and I think to go through something like that is obviously, of anyone who's gone through a rebrand, it's a significant amount of work and incorporating a lot of feedback from a lot of different people, and I think you did an excellent job, and I love the way it turned out, so thank you for the effort on that one.
All right, I think on to events. So Rick mentioned a few of the things that we've been doing to activate our membership and continue to build friendships and community. So many of you were at the recent annual picnic. Continues to be our biggest event of the year. I think we had over 150 people. Again, this year, the new or old venue was a success. And I think we're pleased to report that in recent years, including this past one, the event is not only a fundraiser, but we make a little bit of money off of it too, which we can plow back into our conservation efforts. So thank you all for coming out and continuing to support that. And for anybody,
Yeah, go closer to the mic.
well, thank you. So as I was saying, I think it continues to be a very popular event, and we not only are able to build community and friendships through that, but also the annual picnic in recent years has also turned a little bit of a profit that we can plow into our conservation efforts. Here's the question. Yes?
Wait.
I noticed that the last few years you included Lake Pauline and Lake Rescue. And I also noticed that the picnic was held on Echo Lake. Is there any thought that you would spread membership or regular membership to the people at Echo Lake and Amherst, who are also part of our Black River Headwaters watershed?
I don't think that we've really had a discussion about the lakes in Plymouth in recent years. The question, if anybody didn't hear, was notice that we've included Lake Pauline as part of the Lake Rescue Association. I think Lake Pauline has long been included as part of the Lake Rescue Association. It is one of the Ludlow lakes. But the question was about whether Lake Echo and perhaps Amherst as well might be included in the future. I think that's a good question for the board to consider. I don't know historically if that had been discussed previously, but I think that's something that we could revisit, especially considering some of the discussions that are ongoing around water quality, et cetera. So thank you for raising that. Continuing on, so Rick also mentioned about events, but we continue to try to do things year-round to engage our membership. We believe that building friendships and community, not just with the Lake Rescue members, residents of Ludlow, but also the local business community, is vital to strengthening the community. We feel that it's important if we have affinity to each other, that we are going to be better positioned to work together to fight and deal with some of these environmental issues. So thank you, everybody, for participating. We continue to look for ideas for different things that we can do to engage the local community as well as our lake residents. So if you have ideas, we'd be happy to support and get things set up. We are also looking for volunteers to help us with many of these events to engage the membership. And finally, one thing that we're very proud of at the Lake Rescue Association is the recent member-led pop-up events, so live music in various coves. We do not formally organize these, but we encourage all of you to think about those opportunities to invite neighbors to participate in just fun, casual activities around the lake. That's all.
George, would you like to tackle?
Okay, yeah, just as a quick little follow-up, the question about Lake Pauline being part of Lake Rescue, it always has been. But that has been an issue with a lot of people, particularly on Lake Pauline, because there's no recognition of it. So a few years ago, the board decided to make sure that they included that caption so that everybody on Lake Pauline knows that they are part of the association. And it also helps with membership when people don't know that Pauline is part of Lake Rescue Association. A little tough to get them to sign up and pay their dues and whatnot for membership. So it has always been a part. It's a little more obvious now because we actually advertise that Pauline is part of the Lake Rescue Association. So Jackie talked about involving the community. I'd also just like to say that you all can use the lakes, even if you don't live on them. There's a fishing access up on Lake Rescue, and thanks to the town, there is a great parking spot now down at East Lake Bridge. It was all washed out due to one of the many floods that we've had, but they came in and did fill and whatnot, so there's probably parking for 6 or 7 cars there now, so you can hop right in and wave hello when you go by in Lake Pauline, because that's where I live, but it's really been pretty notable that there now is a nice parking spot there for people to access the lakes, and particularly Lake Pauline, and you can portage and go right up into Rescue. Anyway, I'm supposed to talk about something that's probably on everybody's mind is that milfoil stuff that we're constantly dealing with. And so I'm going to just provide you with a little bit of information on that. It's already been pointed out that the lakes are not ours. They're not any of the landowners. They belong to the state. Consequently, the state does indeed have regulations on what we can do in the lake. Some people didn't really even realize that, we do apply every year. We have a permit to use the dash boat, which you all have heard about. We have a permit to use the bottom barriers, but annually we need to apply to the state to use the dash boat, tell them exactly where we're going to be using it. We have to do an annual survey. We start the survey anytime between May and June. Then we map out the locations that we're going to address. We have to give the state the locations on the lake and send to them specifically requesting permission to do bottom barriers and the dash boat. So we just can't take those and do them any place we want on the lake. We have to get approval from the state to do those things. And we do that on an annual basis. Mentioning the state, we also do write an annual grant that we get from the state. And this year, our full expenses for work on the lakes to mitigate the milfoil issue is going to be probably in the vicinity of $70,000 to $80,000. And we're hoping that we can get, some of that is volunteer hours that we have to report to the state. There's an allowance for volunteers. We expect to spend this year cash probably about $60,000, and that includes our divers that work the dash boat, that do the bottom barriers. It includes our greeter that we have that works at the fishing access. They do that 3 days a week. It does include this year, so we did our survey that I mentioned, and survey was a little tough this year because we had all that sediment that came in, and you will note that at the beginning of this season, there was an exceptional amount of floating milfoil, floating particles. A lot of them already had roots that had formed, so all they were doing was waiting to sink to that bottom, and boom, they were ready to start growing. We're not sure why that is, other than that lovely silt that we had also carries a lot of nutrients, so it helped feed all of the milfoil. So that's part of the reason why we were experiencing so much at the beginning of the season. As a result of that, the board decided we needed to get some more bottom barriers, so we did. The newsletter said we were requesting approval from the state to deploy 20 more barriers. We did get approval, so we bought the barriers, and those have been deployed. We are required to not use the dash boat or the bottom barriers before July 1st, which seems a little bit late to all of us. But from a standpoint of fish habitat and fish spawning, that is the date that we can start effectively working with the dash boat and the bottom barriers. We have to finish our work by October 1st, and that's all written in the grant and our permit application. So we're a little bit limited on some of that. Let's see. I mentioned the barriers. We've had some requests from people about can they get barriers themselves. It turns out that you can actually do that there's an application that you can receive and apply to put bottom barriers down yourself. You have to abide by all the same regulations that we as an organization do, but it is possible, it is available, and if anyone is interested in that, I do have the application, and I'd be happy to send it to you electronically. So that's something that's new. Volunteers, there are some sheets out there. We do look for volunteers to help us. It is not something that Kat and Shane, who are divers, are going to take care of with their dive boat and with the bottom barriers. It's going to take, and does take, all of us to mitigate this milfoil problem and help keep the lakes beautiful so that we can all enjoy them. And there are ways that you can do that. I won't go over them all, but there's a list that are out on one of our head tables of how you can help. Please look at that and be active, particularly if you can take care of your own frontage and maybe both of your neighbors. But it takes all of us in order to mitigate this milfoil issue and milfoil problem. The other thing that I am going to tell you is we have had a few people that have asked us about herbicides. And that is something that the board is, at this stage of the game, not considering. It's not something we would want to do. It's not something that we look forward to doing. But we have decided that at this stage of the game, it is important for us to get ourselves educated on milfoil, what the cost is, what the effects would be on the environment, the wildlife, on swimming, on boating, on fishing, and all of those kinds of things. So you will find that we are going to start doing some fact gathering so that we can intelligently answer questions that people might have on the possible use of Procellacor, which is the one herbicide that is allowed in the state of Vermont. It is highly regulated, and the state does not make it easy, and I'm going to say fortunately, doesn't make it easy just to dump some herbicides in the lake to try to take care of the milfoil issue. It is something that, again, I just want to stress, a couple people have asked us about it, and we really didn't have the answers, so we're trying to educate ourselves, and we'll get some more information on that later today from our speakers. So that's kind of what oops, I went over my 5 minutes. But anyway, I'm happy to answer questions anytime.
I gave him 90 seconds for the record.
But anyway, that's the scoop on milfoil. I will tell you that, and we as a board talked about it last night, we're really feeling there's a lot less right now. There are certain areas where it's really dense, And in those areas, we're using primarily the bottom barriers. In a little bit less dense areas, we can use the dash boat. And in other areas where there are just a smaller number of plants, the divers and we and you can hand harvest.
Thank you, George. All right, so I think what we'll do now, I should have said this originally. So Jay Charles, our treasurer, is not here right now, so he pre-recorded the financial report, so we're going to go through that. If there's any questions if there's any questions that we can answer, we will do our best. Otherwise, former treasurer is here and might be able to give a point of view, Kevin Goldmont. Otherwise, we can direct any question to Jay after the fact. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the Jay Charles Show.
Oh.
My name is Jay Charles. I'm the treasurer of the Lake Rescue Association. I apologize I'm not able to attend today in person, but should you have any questions, feel free to email me after the meeting. Today we will cover two specific documents. The first is the fiscal year 2025 financial report. That report was filed with our tax return in May of 2025, and it is available on ProPublica or other similar sites for your access. I'll also take you through today the first half of 2026. That financial report is complete. One thing to note about that financial report is there is not a lot of activity that happens in the first half of the year. Obviously, with summer coming fully on board in Q3 and the beginning of Q4, that's where most of the activity for the association actually takes place. But nonetheless, I'll take you through those financials as well. Starting with the 2025 income statement, a couple things I'll highlight here. The first thing is just from an income perspective, membership and donations continue to be one of the main drivers of our income, and really could not do that without the support of all of you in the room today, so thank you for that. The other main piece of income that we receive is a grant from the state for our milfoil remediation. That grant for the state is based on expenses that we have in the previous year. So you'll note that 2024 was very light. Our expenses for milfoil in 2023 were not very significant because of the flood that occurred in 23. Obviously, that picked back up in 24 from an expense standpoint, and that is reflected in our 2025 milfoil grant income. The other main driver of income is our interest income. That is based on our brokerage account holdings that you'll see later. And that is, we continue to strive for a fully principal protected, yet high interest CD to ensure that we continue to grow that balance as best as we can. From an expense standpoint, year over year, the biggest change is in the dredging expense. As you know, 24, we did a material dredging project. That wrapped in late 24. We had a couple expenses slip into 25. But again, that project is complete and is a major driver of those expenses that year. And then you'll note that the milfoil expense year over year was in line as well. That all netted out to a positive net income for 25 of about $28,000. Turning our attention to the balance sheet, the bulk of our balances are held within the American portfolios, which holds all of our CDs. And the rest of our balance is held in our general checking at Berkshire Bank. Year over year, a small increase in our assets that you'll see there. And again, that's mainly driven by us recouping and kind of growing our balances from the major dredging project that we did undertake. And this is a snapshot of those brokerage account holdings that I referenced on the previous slide. Nothing really to report here. The only thing I will note, you'll notice that there is one of the descriptions of holdings is some Netflix shares. Those were donated to the Lake Rescue Association in late December. Actually, they hit the account on the 31st. And so, as a result of that, do show up in our financials, but rest assured we are not actively investing in equities. We continue to stay in line with our investment policy that dictates that we are in fully principal protected and insured investments, such as the CDs that you see filled out. Those Netflix shares you'll see in the first half of 26 were liquidated and reinvested in a bank CD. Turning our attention to the first half of 26, the income statement. From the income statement, a couple things I'll highlight here. Again, not a ton of activity. Our milfoil was more or less in line with what you see in 25. Again, because our expenses between 25 and 26 were roughly in line as well. The other thing that you'll note is our Rescue Our Lakes fund income. Those represent our donations that we received. They are double year over year. A little bit of that is timing, just from cash coming in, but we do appreciate this uptick that we do see year over year. On the expense side, not a ton of change year over year. The only two I will note from an operations standpoint, you'll notice that number double year over year. That represents investment we've made in our website that we discussed at this meeting, and improvements there to the website and the full experience that our membership will receive through that project. And then from the milfoil standpoint, that increase is really strictly a timing discrepancy. Most of the invoices in the first half of in 25 came in the second half of 25, so I would not pay too much attention to that milfoil expense discrepancy. That said, I do expect milfoil expenses overall to be higher this year than last year. Just because of what we've experienced so far this summer with some increased milfoil activity and then necessitating additional barriers, as well as Kat and her team out there on the lake to address the milfoil. Turning our attention to the balance sheet, again, not a huge difference year over year for total assets. Sorry, not year over year, period to period for total assets. But you do note that all of it is primarily sitting in the American portfolios. We did make a strategic decision to shift from a large balance in general checking towards the end of Q1 into the American portfolios, into some CDs in Q2 to take advantage of excess cash and some interest income that we could receive on those CDs. And then, as I referenced, the brokerage account, you'll see here we have a number of CDs. Some have already come due as I report this in August. Then others are coming due over the course of late this year into early next year. We continue to see good rates overall. We're kind of hovering in that mid 3% to high 3% range. I kind of expect them more or less to continue to hover in that range. We will continue to seek the highest possible rates that we can get for our investments in these CDs. That's my final slide. Overall, again, I think the Lake Rescue Association is in fantastic standing financially. I have no concerns for our continued operations over the course of this year and into the future. And again, just to reiterate, appreciate all of your support from the membership, from both membership dues, donations, volunteer, and everything else that you do to make the lake a very special place. So thank you very much, and that concludes my presentation.
Great. Any questions or comments on Jay's report? That's great, because couldn't answer them. Is there a motion to accept the treasurer's report? Second?
Second.
Natalie, all in favor? Aye. Great. Motion to approve the treasurer's report passes. And then I have a copy of the minutes from last year. The minutes from every meeting, both these and the board meetings, are posted on the website, just for everyone's awareness. We meet roughly 6 to 8 times a year, so you can always review those minutes on our website. But we do have to approve the minutes from last year's annual meeting. So is there a motion to approve the minutes from 2025?
I move.
Second? Great. Motion passes to, or I'm sorry, does anyone object to approving the minutes from last year's meeting? If so, please see yourself out. Great. Motion to approve the annual meeting minutes from last year passes. Just a quick note on Jay's presentation here. This is just sharing essentially what he said, our projections for what we'd spend in 26. We can talk more about 27 when we start planning for that. And that the dues will remain unchanged, as Rick alluded to, going into 27. Just quickly too, because we're shockingly on time here, as we start to get into the conversations that might have a lot more questions, I am going to do my best to keep things on time. If that means I gently suggest we move on from a question and answer section to go to the next one, we will have a bigger section for Q&A at the end. If there's a topic that feels like it's hotly debated, I would suggest we set up a separate meeting in September that's virtual, where we can go deep on certain topics, but want to be respectful of everyone's time today. With that, just one question that came in. I know George responded to this, but Paula Schwartz had asked about the dash boat's whereabouts and whether it had made its way to Archibald Cove. One thing we could consider, certainly with our new website and some of the features, we haven't talked to Kat and Shane about this yet, but potentially there's something we could explore where there is some sort of a digital tracker where they kind of put a pin where they've been, so everyone can go on the site and see where the dash boat has been, because that's a constant question: is, have they gone here, have they gone there? So we'll work with them and try to take that as a task, probably going into next summer. But I think that would be a great thing for us to try to do. Great. With that, so all the challenges we talked about earlier, I think they interestingly kind of all intersect together, which is why it's so important that our guests are here today, because I think they all kind of hand off to each other in different ways. So we're thrilled with the slate that we have today. I think this is going to be a great conversation. We are going to start off with our new municipal manager, Penny Wu, who is probably rounding year 1 here at this point, almost. 7 months. I'm aging her fast. It's you get thrown into it here, right? At least you didn't get a flood like Brendan did the first time. So we're gonna have Penny come up to the podium. She'll speak for a bit. Obviously, any Q&A that you might have for Penny, we are there. The town's a great partner. We rely on them heavily for obviously many things, and we're thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you, Spencer. Everyone can hear me okay? What a crowd. It's awesome. If ever I want a crowd at a select board's meeting, I will say the Lake Rescue Pauline and Round Pond Association will be in attendance. So this is awesome. Thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it. So give me the sign if I go too far, and I'll wrap it up. So it's great to see some familiar faces. Penny Wu, municipal manager. For those that don't know who I am, just a little bit about where I come from, my management style, that sort of thing. And then I do want to talk, as someone just said, emergency management is first and foremost in our right off the dashboard. And then what are we doing in terms of 2023 flood recovery? And then some other projects that we have in the hopper. So I was born and raised in the area, and my husband and I were only supposed to be out west for 5 years, so that turned into 25 years later, 3 kids, and here I am back. So this is my second career. I'm loving every minute of it. Believe me when I say that. I am a 35-year retiree from the Forest Service, and what I did in that federal career was work in different areas across the country at all levels of the Forest Service. I was primarily a recreation specialist, but I worked from trails to develop recreation, and I ended my career working for headquarters at the national level. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm just thrilled to be back in this town that we all love so much. I'm living on Andover Street, and my mom thought that when I took the job, everybody would be stopping into the house or calling the 228 number, but luckily that hasn't happened yet. So please feel free to come in and see me, call me. I would love to come out and talk to you and meet with you out on some of your projects. So what struck me the most about the association and growing up here, I did not know that this association was almost 100 years old. That is an incredible, commendable, just an awesome kind of dedication that shows how resolute you all are in your mission. What struck me the most is that first slide that you had up, that stewardship, partnership, and community. I mean, that really strikes the heart as to why you're all here. And so that kind of speaks to who I am and the type of town manager that I like to try and work toward, and that is a values-based, purpose-driven, and relationship-focused ethos. Okay, so Ludlow management, in terms of the emergency that we just kind of came off of, we were under a flood watch and flood warning. We felt like we were very prepared for that. We had a very proactive approach to this last rain event. We lowered dams 1 and 2 because of the conditions that were in front of us. It allowed for that, to do that in a safe manner, so that when those rains did come this past week, that we had the ability to hold as much water in all of our dams, 4 dams, even though they're numbered 1, 2, 3, and 5. The elusive number 4 is out there somewhere. So we were able to hold as much water as possible in 1 and 3 due to dry conditions, low river, low Jewel Brook, and then many of the mitigation things that I feel like the town has taken these last steps, the last few years. So that's your Ludlow emergency management team is a volunteer-based, but it's also part of your Ludlow and town village employees. All the department heads play a role, whether it's in managing that crisis of whether it's flood, hazmat, or wildfires, or brush fires that escape. That's what that emergency management team is for. I was extremely proud of how everyone came together, and there were several of you that reached out to me on the side and said, what can we do to help if this thing turns into a true emergency? What can we do? Where do you want us? And that sort of thing. So the team was ready. We were continually in a monitor and preparedness mode, but we were ready to turn that lever if need be and jump into evacuation, open up the community center for evacuees, and have equipment ready to help with evacuation and or sedimentation flooding issues, okay? 2023 seems like it was a long time ago, but it wasn't really. The 2023 flood recovery is a continual effort. And there are several things that we are doing as a town, a village. We are working continuously with the Vermont Emergency Management Division to address some of those flood recovery projects from 2023. We are working with other organizations in the town and the state, and I dare say regionally, to prepare for the next event. Some of the things that we are continuing to work on, I'm just gonna roll through these. I'm looking at you for time, Spencer.
Great.
Okay. Dam rehab. So as I said, we have 4 dams, 1, 2, 3, and 5. We do have a $3 million contract that is not paid by any taxpayer in Ludlow, so don't believe everything you read on Facebook. So that $3 million contract is paying for the engineering services of Dubois and King, and they are working on how do we rehab each dam, because each dam is structurally different than the other one. So how do we fortify and or rehab those dams so that they will last another, they were built, what, in the 50s or 60s, so how do those last another 100+ years? That is a $3 million engineering contract, and those, each dam is at a various stage in design. When that work completes, we are estimating that the work on those 4 dams is an estimated $30 million. We are guaranteed a 65% federal share, and the town must come up with 35% in terms of that 30 million. That's approximately $11 million. So those are kinds of things when I talk about that I am purpose-driven and relationship-focused. I am trying to build the relationships with my federal and state partners so that we can lower that amount of money that we all as taxpayers have to foot in terms of that 35% for the dam rehab project. Another thing that we are working on is the wastewater treatment facility here in the village and town. The existing footprint was damaged by several floods dating back to the 70s. It is performing at an incredible 100% in terms of performance. There are pieces that do need to be rebuilt to code and standard. At the existing footprint, that is to the tune of $8 to $10 million. We are working with FEMA and Vermont Emergency Management to help us fund that piece. Meanwhile, when we are discussing the wastewater treatment facility plan, we are also looking at a new facility located on higher ground at the industrial park that's named after the former municipal manager, Dean Brown. We were recently deeded close to 20 acres behind LaValleys and behind Geldwen Door Company. And we were deeded that land specifically to locate and construct and house that new treatment facility plant. Excuse me. We are also working with the Vermont Emergency Management and FEMA to help us not only reconstruct at the existing footprint those pieces that we need, but also running concurrently and behind LaValleys, hopefully a new plant in the future. That is a large price tag as well. That is close to $25 million current cost. I am looking at ways to fund that federally and through other state means. Other projects that we are doing in relationship to the 2023 flood, FEMA buyout. So you all see Sam's Steakhouse that is boarded up. I apologize for how that looks. The town now owns that property. When we took possession of that property earlier this summer, we boarded that up immediately, and we posted it with signs to explain what's happening there and what the future holds for that location. You may have seen people recently on the roof or contractors kind of poking around. So the state of Vermont, again, not to the cost of the taxpayer. Don't believe everything you read on social media. So at Sam's Steakhouse, we have a contractor working there that is being paid by the Vermont Emergency Management Division to demolish that building and rehab that site. They are currently doing an asbestos inventory of the building itself. There is one diesel tank that is in the ground that needs to be removed. For some of you that have lived here for a long time, you know that Sam's Steakhouse used to be a gas station back in the 70s, before it became the original site of DJ's, Diamond Jim's. The gas tanks that were associated with that gas station were removed in the 80s, so that's a good thing. Once the building comes down, it will be rehabbed, and it will still be held by the town, but we cannot build permanent infrastructure there to the tune of like these buildings. Ideas that we have discussed as a select board, and I have discussed in the community with different people and groups, are maybe we do a municipal rideshare lot where we can have the mover come in and the bus come in and they can overlap for a bus stop. Maybe we have a parking lot, a graveled parking lot with some other simple features, recreation paths, that sort of thing. So there are some different ideas there. Snowmobile parking is needed as well. For those of you that do ride sleds, you know that trail comes right off of South Hill, right past the old Little League field, and it goes back up to connect across the highway. So that might be a great opportunity for the Side Hill Snowmobile Club to have a trailhead there. We are waiting on FEMA approval for 2 other pieces of buyout in town. 18 Mill Street, which is, as a kid growing up, it was always known as the Mill Street Mill. The building's been tired for a long time. It's been inundated by several floods, and we're hoping that FEMA will continue with the buyout and they will take care of that for all of us. The other piece, the other property is 86 Pleasant Street, which is across the street from the Mill Street Mill. And it is pending as well with a FEMA buyout. And then lastly, we are still working with the engineers on a design for Clark Bridge replacement project. So that's kind of a quick rundown of some of the things that we're working on in conjunction and as a result of the 2023 flood. Other projects, can I just run through really other projects? Sorry. Economic development is near and dear to my heart, and having seen 2 floods here in about 11 years has taken its toll. And we know that there's properties here in town, not just the village, but in the town itself, where we need to work with the landowner, we need to work as a community, and we need to work with the state in terms of how do we rebuild, how do we ensure that what goes there is what the town needs. So I've been talking with owners of the Potbelly and the Book Nook. I am trying to track down the owner of the convenience store. Growing up, it was the Cumberland Farms. I think it was the 7-Eleven. So those kinds of things. It's very important for me to talk to those business owners, landowners, and really understand what their vision is for that property and how can we help either as a town, or do you need me to work with the state on floodplain, wetland relief, that sort of thing. And so ways that maybe everyone here could help is we're currently going through a municipal plan revision. What do we want our town to look like in the future? The revision process, we are required by the state to revise our municipal plan every, I can't remember how many years, but we're up for that. So now's the time for you all to help us, give us that feedback in terms of what you want to see in that municipal plan, which plays right into all the work that the Lake Association is doing. Specifically for downtown, we did receive a grant for a village master plan to focus on everything from pedestrian safety, parking, beautification, sidewalks, how do we connect our parks? And that is currently happening now through a Better Connections grant. We've hired the SE group to help us realize that goal of updating and beautifying our awesome downtown area. You can go to the Ludlow Facebook page, and there's a link there on that survey. So please, everyone, go in there and tell us what you think. And then finally, we are, if you recall, we are trying to complete the town and village merger. We did our work here as a municipality, and I couldn't be more proud of how the community came together and voted to combine both governments. So we will combine village and town. Now we need the legislature to do their work and adopt it, vote on it, and then we can realize hopefully some other modernization efforts internally. So that is now with the state, and when the legislature comes back into session, they will be responsible for carrying that, shepherding it over the finish line. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Penny. We can, if anybody has a question, we can open it up for one or two questions. One that came quickly was a suggestion for some fast EV chargers in that space, potentially, where you were talking at Sam's. And then the other, this is just something that we talked to Penny about 6 months ago when you first came on, and I think you alluded to it with your relationships from a federal perspective. But as we hear more from Marie and Kelly about some of the future plans of kind of how we're going to monitor the water flow into the lakes and what that looks like, I think we're looking forward to trying to work with you and the town to try to help us leverage some of those relationships with the state to try to get more support for projects around the lake that are not just reliant on the homeowners to fund. But I think that it sounds like everything you're talking about could be something we could work together with to try to apply for grants maybe we didn't know existed, or different ways given the tax base coming from the lakes region. We think there's a good opportunity to try to do something in that space.
Yep, absolutely. It all ties together in terms of where the water comes from, where it wants to flow to, and how it leaves Ludlow and heads down toward the Connecticut River, but it all ties together. So we'll definitely get there. We have to plan for the worst, is what I like to say. But we will expect the best and always prepare to be surprised, so thank you.
Hi. My name's Joe Rubin. I live out on the lake, and every time I look at the weather report and it says flood watch, flood alert, 2 or 3 inches, it just puts terror in my heart. It does. And I wonder, have the culverts been checked? Is somebody, and I'm looking in the culverts to see if
I'm sorry, but you really need to
Oh,
hold
I'm
that
sorry.
almost as if you're kissing it.
Okay. I don't, this isn't good.
That is
I don't
better.
think, is it? Isn't? Okay, so every time it rains, I just get so terrified. You're not supposed to help me with my feelings, but, you know, I do. And I'd like to know that the culverts are checked every X period of time and have confidence that that we're doing something about that. Okay.
Thank you for the question. So the question was, are the culverts being checked when it rains, basically? I can tell you right now that you're only as good as how you maintain your infrastructure. And so on the heels of this last week, and that was my foray into the catastrophic rains that we now get here from June to August. I lean hard on my experience as a wildland firefighter. And then when I finished my career, I was on an overhead type 1 team. And so again, you have to plan for the worst. And so it does come down to maintenance. So when I pulled my team together earlier in the week, and we talked about this rain event that was coming our way, when it looked like the National Weather Service was going to put a flood watch then warning in our region, you instantly, my mind goes to, what does the infrastructure look like? What's the current level of the water in our dams? And then what happens once I know that is secure, we're safe, we know how to manage those. Then I ask, what are the other priority features? The bridges, are the spillways clean? Are the culverts operating properly? So we're not there yet, but we will get there in terms of the amount of expertise that is among the team that we have is all up here. And so what I want to do is draw that out, because they know exactly where those pinch points are, where the priority culverts continue to be, but the ones that I really worry about are those secondary or tertiary culverts that we need to continue to maintain. I think this may play right into maybe one of the guest speakers that we're going to hear from, but it really does take not just a village, but a community and a town to ensure that we are all alerted to where those problem areas are. So during this last week, we made it very clear that the 3 modes of communication that we put into place, the very important one is OnSolve. And so that is the app that we have chosen to use, and that is an emergency app that you all can sign up with. When you get something from that, you need to sit up and listen, okay? I will not overuse that in terms of communication. The other 2 forms of external communication that we will use and have used is the town's Facebook page and is our website. Internally, my team and I were using our cell phones, texting, and then if I needed to, we would go to email, but it was primarily by phone, okay? So for the public, when you see something like a plugged culvert and you want to bring that to our attention, during office hours, we made that very clear that you please call the town hall downstairs. I don't have the numbers memorized. But it was on our website, it was on our Facebook page. After hours, we want you to call Ludlow PD. And then they have the numbers that they can then call if it's after hours or say on a weekend. They will either call me, they will call our highway foreman, or so on, and we will get eyes on it. But those were my questions in the very early hours of planning for a flood watch warning. What are our assets? What do they look like? Can we get hands on them? Can we get eyes on them? We also pivoted the cemetery crew to come down into town so that our road maintenance guys and gal can stay focused on those priorities. Does that help? Thank you, sorry.
Can you spell the name of that app?
OnSolve, so if you go onto our Ludlow Town website, the banner up top, and if you're on your laptop, it will work. If you're on a phone or a mobile device, sometimes it's a little bit wonky, but you can sign up on our Ludlow website.
Can we, so just, we are running a little behind now. Can we, are you able to stick around for a little bit, Penny, or are you
Always.
jetting somewhere? If we can just start going to our other speakers, and then we'll have a Q&A session for everybody at the end. That might be the best way, just to make sure we can get through some of this. Thank you, Penny, for that. We're going to bring up Pat Swazi next, who runs the Friends of Vermont Lakes and Ponds. This is a great group for us to be able to engage with, since there are many, many lakes that face similar challenges. And we're very happy that Pat drove 2 hours to be here, so we're very appreciative of her time and look forward to hearing from her.
Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Spencer and the board for inviting me. I'm Pat Swazi. I'm president of the Federation of Vermont Lakes and Ponds. The Federation, just a real quick overview. The Federation is a statewide coalition of volunteer lake associations. Representatives from lakes that don't have associations, as well as individuals. We are all volunteer, including me. We do have one part-time staff person who helps us. And you can go to the next slide, if you would. Thank you. Our work really is to provide education for all of the volunteer associations, all of you, as well as the general public on lake issues. We do this with a series of webinars, events. We have 2 hybrid all-day conferences every year, newsletter, we send out a weekly email with news, social media, our website. We also advocate at the state level, so we're in to the legislature testifying at various committee meetings, talking with legislators about lake issues. We try to get into the State House fairly often to meet with people. We work with other conservation groups, as well as all of our member lake associations. Finally, we do a lot of networking and collaboration. We have various discussion groups where we bring members, our representatives from our member associations together on particular topics of great interest, I'm sure, to this group, and George Thompson's already on our mailing list for this one, is the Milfoil Solutions group. We also have a dam discussion group because dams have become a big issue for lakes around the state. And we also have another group that's been working with the lakes that had wake boats on them. So that's kind of just a very general overview of what we do. So Natalie, in asking me to come here, asked me to cover a couple of topics. One is any statewide laws or regulations that are new that involve lakes. Also to talk a little bit about funding, and then milfoil control, particularly herbicides. So next slide, if you will. I'm going to start with the regulations. The main one that is really important for lakes right now is the Flood Safety Act, which was passed in 2024, contained within it, and you've heard of some of the other flood issues, but contained within it is a prohibition on the use of unencased polystyrene, that is styrofoam, bare styrofoam, in the waters of the state. So some of the old float devices, some old buoys, some of the older floating docks had used bare styrofoam as it's, to keep them up, it's floating. That's no longer allowed in the state. Most of the companies that sell docks in the state have abandoned it a while ago. But the important thing is you should take a look around if you have any floating devices, see if there's any styrofoam in them. If you possibly can, you need to get it out of the water. It can be replaced with encased styrofoam, so plastic encasement around styrofoam, but you also need to keep an eye on that and make sure it's in good repair. If there's holes, that needs to be repaired, taken out, new encasing, and so forth. So this website from the Department of Environmental Conservation will have all of the details if you have any concerns about that, and of course you can always contact us too. That's the main one. The only other thing that we're watching right now, because there was some veto action, but the only other one that should be coming out maybe this summer is this phase 2 of the dam safety rules, and Penny mentioned dam issues. The dam safety program, the state dam safety program, has been promising phase 2 of the rules. The phase 1 really addressed the inspection and recording of dams. It defined what low hazard, high hazard, so forth, all of those other things mean. Phase 2 of the rules is going to be very specific details about what dam owners need to do given the different levels of condition that the inspections are showing in their dams. So this particularly applies to privately owned dams, dams that the state doesn't own, and in some cases lake associations own their dam, and as you heard already, the costs of dealing with dam issues is very, very high. So we are watching for these draft rules that are supposed to have come out this summer so far. I guess it's still summer, so we have another month or so. But once those draft rules are issued, we'll be getting very involved through both our advocacy and through our dam discussion group on commenting on them, and we'll get them out to everybody because it's really going to determine, like if you're, for example, the Lake Rescue Dam is a low hazard dam. However, it is in poor condition. But what does that mean? If your dam is listed in poor condition, does that mean you have to take action? When do you have to take action? Exactly what action has to be taken? So those are the rules. They're not out yet, but we're watching for them. So you'll hear from us, hopefully. Get our emails and you will hear about that, we hope, in the near future. This is, by the way, these rules have been promised for 3 years and they still haven't done them, so we'll see. Anyway, those are the two main things that are happening right now in terms of statewide regulations. Of course, the wake boat rules you've heard about, that doesn't really affect your lakes. You never had wake sports here. They've never been allowed. They won't be allowed now. So that doesn't change anything for you, although for a number of other lakes in the state, it is making a big difference. Okay, so I'm going to move on to funding. Next slide, please. You heard about how much funding, when you had your financial report, and George also mentioned this, the funding, and Natalie asked me to just lay out where the sources of the money come from. So it is all in this Grant and Aid Fund. The Grant and Aid Fund was created in statute by the state legislature. So the Grant and Aid funding sources now, there's $500,000 in the state budget. Okay, so that's sort of a base funding. Motorboat registration fees provide $250,000 each year into that fund. Motorboat registration fees are divided between this fund, and Fish and Wildlife gets some of that, so $250,000 for this. In the past, the Army Corps of Engineers also provided $100,000 into grant and aid. Each year, the Army Corps of Engineers used to give the state a larger grant for various invasive projects, and $100,000 went into the Grant and Aid Fund. The Grant and Aid Fund is for supporting lake associations' work in terms of prevention and control of invasives. And of course, our main work, because of the most widespread invasive in the inland lakes, is milfoil. It's mainly on milfoil. So on the right-hand side, in the right-hand box, shows how that money is divided between the programs. This year, and this is for this year, $475,000 for greeter programs. Milfoil programs get the $200,000, and then $75,000 goes to scientific studies, and a little bit of that is also for administrative, pays some interns at the state level. That scientific study money used to be education and outreach, but now it's scientific studies that the state runs. Okay, let me just tell you a couple things about this. There are 35 to 36 greeter programs in the state. So that $475,000 is divided across all of those programs. So when you think about how much each program gets, not a lot. And that also has been the limiting factor in bringing new programs online. Because what we need, greeters are the first line of defense against milfoil getting into lakes. They're also an important line of prevention at lakes that already have milfoil, because they also inspect lakes coming out of the lake, boats coming out of the lake, to make sure that they are not carrying milfoil to the next place they go. And that's really important for those of us who live on lakes that have milfoil, to have that responsibility. So we need more programs, not enough money to do that. Milfoil programs means milfoil control. So that would be your DASH program, any of your diver programs, anything where you're asking for money. So again, $200,000 across the entire state. So we've been advocating hard for more money. And actually, we got the $500,000 about 3 years ago now through our advocacy efforts. Before that, there had been only $25,000 in the state budget for this program. So we kind of convinced the legislature that maybe a little more money would be helpful. So $500,000. This year, the request for funding into the Grant and Aid program, $1.9 million. So that shows you the need is great. The money's not so great. But we work with what we've got. And programs are great, but that does is it puts onto the shoulders of all of the volunteer associations the necessity of raising a certain amount of money in addition. In terms of additional funding for milfoil and for the greeters, lake associations in the Champlain Basin do have the opportunity to apply for grants from the Lake Champlain Basin program. Right now, however, on this side of the mountains, there is not another option. We have hope that there will be some additional funding that's going to be available statewide. So we're going to see, because that is dependent, dependent on federal funds. And right now, we don't know what's happening. As you see, what I put up there on the left box, we didn't get the Army Corps money this year because the federal government is, withholding various grant funds. So we just don't know at this point, but we're hoping that that will still come through. So that's the funding picture. To the extent that it exists, this is what exists for milfoil control as well, and that includes your greeter programs. Okay, moving on to milfoil itself. Next slide, if you will. Okay, milfoil, Eurasian water milfoil. I don't have to tell you how bad it is. I don't have to tell you what a problem it is. I don't have to tell you what a battle it is. You all have been working on that. It can spread so quickly. George mentioned that, a fragment can root, drop to the bottom, and you've got a spread. So it's very damaging to a native ecosystem, so it's really, really important to keep up with it. I live on a lake that has had that problem. In fact, the picture on the right is what the northern part of our lake looked like before we got it under control. It can really be bad. So, next slide, please. It is the most widespread invasive in the inland lakes. This is a sample list of the inland lakes that are infested with milfoil. And you can see it's a few. I did not include the rivers and streams. I didn't include a lot of the smaller ponds, many of which are infested, but they may not have a public access. However, that's the bad news. There is some good news. We still have a lot of lakes that are not infested. When you start to think about this, look at the lakes that are not on there. Echo Lake in Charleston up north, Seymour Lake, Shadow Lake, Averill Lake, a lot of the Northeast Kingdom lakes, Maidstone, Harvey's Lake, Raponda down south, Waterbury Reservoir, Green River Reservoir, many, many others still don't have any milfoil. In fact, still don't have any invasives. So all the more reason that we protect those lakes and we control the milfoil in the lakes that do have it. So of these lakes, I will just mention, because herbicide has been mentioned, I'm going to talk about herbicide. Very few of these lakes use herbicide that are the ones that are infested, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But next slide, please. Thank you. More good news is we actually have the tools, and you're aware of the tools. George has described the tools, the dash, bottom barriers, hand pulling, and then, of course, use of aquatic herbicide. None of these are perfect. They all have pros and cons, and we can talk for a long time about the pros and cons of each one. Any kind of hand pulling, there's always the danger of fragmentation, and sometimes hand pulling and even dash can fragment to the extent that you get it out of one area, meanwhile the fragments have flowed to another area. So these kinds of things can be a problem. Bottom barriers kill everything. There's limitations on when you can put them in, when you take them out, and so forth. And everything is costly. All of it's costly, and as I said, there's almost no money from the state for this. So that means once infested, as you know, this is a perpetual fight, and there's a perpetual need to raise the money to do it. And of course, the costs go up constantly. Next slide, please. This is a sample cost analysis. This was done by Salem Lake a couple of years ago as they were working through their research into what was the best combination of tools. And really what we look at, and really all the lakes that we work with have been looking at, is combining. You never are using just one tool. You combine a lot of different methods to get after these infestations. So I think this is a great example. I know it's a little bit hard to read. It is in our white paper, which I have a link to that too a little later. But they included both the costs, okay? They looked at the costs for all the different methods and based on how thick the infestation was. But also, besides costs, it's important to consider, volunteer time and energy, the effectiveness of each method depending on the size of your infestation, depending on how far out of control it's gone. As a result of this analysis, Salem decided to use herbicide, to apply for an aquatic herbicide permit. So I'd like to, if we go to the next slide, please. These are the lakes that have now got aquatic herbicide permits. There's 13 of them. I think 13 is the right number. As you can see, as I mentioned, only a few of the infested lakes have gone this route so far. And most of them have done what you've been doing, which is, dash and bottom barriers and hand pulling and then all the, collecting fragments, getting everybody to collect fragments and so forth. And when it's gotten out of control or when the costs have gotten so high, they've begun to look at other options. This is not a recommendation. This is just this is another tool to look at and worth looking at and making a decision. And each lake is unique. Each situation is unique. The available funds are unique depending on what you have and how much time and energy you have and how bad your infestation is. As George mentioned, if you want to look and research into using aquatic herbicide, only one is permitted in Vermont, which is Procelicor. Vermont has the strictest protocols for the use of aquatic herbicide in the country. No state is stricter than Vermont. So not only will it only permit this one herbicide, it's a very rigorous process to even get a permit. So next slide, please. This is a little bit about Procelicor before we get into the permitting process. It's narrowly targeted to Eurasian water milfoil. It is not at all like what you might think an herbicide is when you hear the word herbicide. It is not like Roundup. It's not the sort of thing you spray on a plant and it just like keels over, and if it touches any other plant, that kills it too. So don't think about it like that. Procelicor actually mimics a plant's growth hormones. And what it does is it's taken up by the milfoil, and that disrupts its growth. Actually, it sort of makes it overgrow so that it kills the plant. And they kind of keel over. They almost disintegrate. So it's not something, if it touched a dandelion, it wouldn't have any effect, because it's very specific and narrowly targeted to milfoil. It has a very slight effect on a couple of other plants. We've seen it cause the white water lilies leaves to curl up if it's anywhere near a treatment area. They recover within about a month. It doesn't really kill them. They kind of don't really like it, but it doesn't really kill them. Other than that, there hasn't been problems in the lakes that have used it. It's effective at very, very low concentrations. The state allows up to up to 4 prescription dose units, PDUs. That's equivalent to about slightly less than 2 parts per billion with a B. Okay. The EPA allows 25 prescription dose units, which is equivalent to about 50 parts per billion in drinking water. But the state only permits up to 4 to kill milfoil, and it kills the milfoil. So it's a very extremely low dose. Again, as the list says, it's no risk to human health because we're not plants, we don't have plant hormones. It's non-carcinogenic, non-mutagenic, that is, doesn't cause cancer, doesn't cause mutations, has not shown any adverse impact on plant life or terrestrial, or animals, aquatic animals. It does not affect pollinators in any way. It dissipates very quickly. I have, of the 13 lakes that have used it, all the reports show that within 48 hours of treatment, the water samples show no existence of it anymore. So it dissipates very, very quickly. The milfoil takes it up very quickly. The method used is it's put into tanks, and I'll tell you the permitting process is complicated, but when they actually do it, they don't spray it, they don't just dump it. They actually put it in tanks, and they have a hose, an underwater hose, and they actually place it in the milfoil patches, so wherever the densest areas are. So it's not kind of sprayed and just all over the place. As George mentioned, you do need a permit for this. The permitting process for dash and bottom barriers is rigorous. The permitting process for aquatic herbicide is incredibly rigorous. So next slide, please. You have to do a lot of work. You have to do a lot of research. You need to really have all your ducks in a row, as they say. You need to have an integrated 5-year management plan for your lake. So you really have to, and integrated means you've got to integrate all the different methods of milfoil control. You can't just say, okay, we're not doing any of the others, we're just doing herbicide. You have to continue to do everything else. Any treatment plan, then you have to have a treatment plan, and that's a 5-year treatment plan. So you have to really dig in, depending on how much milfoil you have, depending on the size of your lake. You've got to figure out, will you treat every year? They don't really like you to treat every year, so it's usually like every 3 years. You need to document all of your milfoil control activities. So you have it. I mean, it's been great what you've been doing here with the dash, with the bottom barriers, hand pulling. But there's other activities as well. Your greeter program counts. If you've been doing work with your lakefront property owners, say to have them planting buffers, reducing runoff, working with property owners in terms of upgrading septic systems. These are all because any nutrient reduction helps to control the milfoil, because more nutrients, milfoil loves nutrients, and milfoil grows faster than any other aquatic plants, as I'm sure you've discovered. So all of that you need to incorporate, you need to have it in the plan, it needs to be part of a 5-year plan, and then you also need to document that you've been doing all of this. And you've been doing all of this and you still can't get it under control. That's really kind of the place. You need to do full lake plant surveys. Usually you probably want to bring in a professional to do that. Arrowwood here, Darren Freshwater. There's various outside organizations that will do them for you. They will document all the plants in your lake as well as pinpoint where all the milfoil is. You may already have some of those being done. But you want to get all of the plants, because the state will want to know, are there any particularly sensitive plants? Are there any endangered species? Those types of things. So they'll expect you to have that. Then you need to provide them with all the Procelicor research. Even though every lake that's got a permit has already done this, they ask each lake association to do it again. Okay, so something new might have come out, and that's something that you would need to do. Then you need to have maps where the vegetation is, where the plant treatment areas are. There's, of course, forms that you have to fill out. And then you also have to notify every single property owner that abuts the water body where you're just asking for the permit, you're just applying for a permit, you're not even doing anything yet. You have to notify them by U.S. mail that you are applying for a permit. That's just to get the permit. Once you have the permit, next slide, please. Once you get the permit. Now, George described what you had to do just for the dash. For the pesticide, for aquatic herbicide use, you've got to do all of that plus more. You have to do a pre-treatment survey. You will also have to do, if you do treatment, you're going to have to do a post-treatment survey. And then you will have to do 2 plant surveys per year for every year after the treatment. I think it's at least 3 years after the treatment. You have to do 2, spring and fall. You need to submit, now you have the permit now. Now you need to submit a very specific plan of treatment for DEC review and approval. Then you need to schedule a pesticide applicator. Right now, for many years, there was only one who was, because they have to be licensed in the state of Vermont to do aquatic pesticide. For many years, there was only one. Now there's 2. Because again, the state's very specific and very rigorous about who's allowed to do this in the waters of the state. So you have to get them scheduled. You have to get Department of Agriculture pesticide inspector scheduled, because they have to be on site. They have to watch it being loaded onto the boat. They have to check the mix so that they make sure it's only, no more than 4 PDUs, and that's, all of that has to be checked. And then, of course, you need to set up water sampling, because you have to sample the water 24 hours, 48 hours. So you have to have volunteers or an outside environmental group firm that will come in and do the sampling for you. You have to notify, again, all property owners and 1 mile downstream of the treatment area. 30 days prior to treatment, you have to post signs, so you have to have them printed and posted at all accesses, any road or anything that leads to the lake. I mean, there's all these things you have to go through. And you can read all the rest of it. There's a lot to do. One of the things you should know is there is no requirement of non-use of water even on the day of treatment. However, the Vermont Health Department recommends, but doesn't require, that people don't use the water the day of treatment. But there's no EPA requirement for that, like there is for some other things that you do in the water. So therefore, the state also requires the Lake Association to purchase bottled water for use by any household that uses the water from the lake for either drinking water or for cooking. So there's a lot of things you have to do, so it's not easy. And then, of course, you have to do your pesticide minimization reports every year. And you have to do them even in years you don't treat if you have a permit. You have to, all the years you have a pesticide permit, you have to do a pesticide minimization report at the end of the year explaining to DEC all the different things you've done to reduce the amount of treatment that you have to do. In other words, you do all the other things so that you only treat. So that's what it takes, which is to do a lot. Okay, so here's the thing. It's a tool. It's a tool that works. There have been, lakes, I will tell you, and my husband can attest to this, he's up there in the back. We're on Lake Iroquois, and we're the ones that we've been the poster child for a really bad milfoil problem for many years. And it took 7 years of work and research and discussion and controversy with our community before we actually did an herbicide treatment with Procelacor. And we did that first treatment in 2021, and I'll tell you, it was amazing. We just could not get, the milfoil had gotten so bad. We brought in dash, hand pump, we were doing everything. I mean, we did all kinds of stream remediation. We simply couldn't get it under control. So it's worth looking at, but it may not be right for you because every situation is unique. But I think doing the research and knowing what it takes, what you have to do, and the cost. And what we found is we just couldn't raise enough money to keep doing dash to get it under control. For a huge infestation or a really difficult infestation, it can be much more cost effective. There's a few things you do have to remember though. We are all limited by the state to treating only 40% of the littoral zone. And the littoral zone is the shallower area of the lake where aquatic plants can grow. So it's where the light reaches. That's where the milfoil is, that's where all the aquatic plants are. That is also where the fish spawn, that's where everything's happening in the lake. The state only allows 40% to be treated with any method. So that would be if you're doing dash, if you're doing bottom barriers, and then if you decide to use some herbicide, you can only treat up to 40% of the littoral zone. If you have milfoil in more than 40% of the littoral zone, that means you're always going to have milfoil. So that even with herbicide treatment, it can be a real lifesaver for a lake, and it can really reduce your costs, but it may not be full eradication. In fact, full eradication is probably not possible given the obstacles, that obstacle, along with the nature of milfoil to love to spread. So next slide, please. I'm just about done. I'm just going to show you some resources.
Great.
So I just want to mention that the Federation provides a lot of resources available to our Lake Association members, and Lake Rescue Association has been a long-time member, and our milfoil discussion group, the white paper that is on our website, and Natalie has copies of it, and that really walks through all of this and has case studies from a lot of different lakes. And then if we can just quickly flip to the next couple slides, there's a lot more information and also a lot of sources, scientific sources, on all of this available, and you have the electronic copy of these slides, so feel free to share them or print them out as a start to doing some research on this. This is what, the last picture, please. Just bring that up. There we go. That's Shadow Lake and Glover. They have no milfoil, by the way. They're one of the ones that has no invasives. This is what we really want. We want clear, beautiful lakes, and we want to use, I think, all the tools we have available to us. So I'm happy to answer questions or...
This is great, Pat. I think we'll probably pause on questions until we get through everybody. So save your questions or write them down. But this is incredibly helpful, and I think it's a nice kind of segue into some of the conversations we're going to have with Marie and Kelly, specifically around how what they're trying to mitigate will help ultimately mitigate this as well. But this is great stuff for us to consider. So with that, let's pause on questions. Thanks, Pat, very much. So Marie needs access to share, George. So Marie Caduto, who is the watershed planner for the DEC and in our region, has been a great supporter and friend of ours to help us really understand some of the challenges that are coming into our lakes. I think a lot of the questions we've had recently are around why is the turbidity so bad? Why is there sediment sitting on my waterfront, and Marie is here to solve all of our problems in 10 minutes, which will be great.
Don't I wish?
Pat took care of the milfoil, and we're moving on.
Done.
Just give me a second, make sure everybody can see the
she
right
just shared the
things
screen.
here. There we go. Excellent. Be nice. Yeah. Yes. So hi. Thanks for the invitation, the opportunity to talk with you all today. As you said, I'm Marie Levette Caduto. I'm the watershed planner with the Department of Environmental Conservation. I do surface waters, rivers, lakes, streams, ponds, and I do planning for that. So my job basically is to find problems and figure out how we fix them. And I do that with big plans that are 250 pages long. And on that note, I'm about to start this plan literally this month. So I will really love to hear your input, because what goes into my plans is the priorities for the state to work on. So get LRA's input into that plan, it'd be great. On that note, I'm also working with Kelly Stetner, and I'm gonna let her introduce herself for her slides so she can go into that. But again, just great to be here, thanks. Now, a few things we just want to cover. I just want to do a quick introduction to the lake watershed, so we're all on the same page on what we're dealing with as we hit the lakes here. Kelly's going to talk about the upcoming watershed action plan, which is the biggest project we're funding at this point. A quick update on lake monitoring that's appropriate for that process. I'm just going to gloss over the Eurasian milfoil. I think you got that covered. And then I'll get into kind of the turbidity issues, the sediment issues. And that's, I know, going to be an interesting conversation. So when we're talking about the Black River watershed, oh, I'm not seeing my notes. Okay, so I've got to wing it here. So the whole watershed runs from Shrewsbury Peak all the way down to the Connecticut River. And it's a pretty good sized watershed, and there's a lot of tributaries in there. The piece that we want to talk about is what's referred to the Upper Black River, and that's the area that drains to the lakes, right? So it's all that area that's coming to the lakes, and I'm blocked here, so I can't see that. Let me get rid of that. Okay, so we're talking 100 square miles of land that drains into the top lake, which is Lake Amherst. It's a lot of territory that is covered by this. These are a little hard to see. So you've got Amherst, Echo, Rescue, and Pauline
In the state system, Pauline is called Reservoir Pond, so that's just how it is. The things that are protective, that are protecting all the lakes, is the fact that we have the Shoreline Protection Act, which I'm sure many of you have had to interact with, that protects the 250 feet adjacent to the water. And that's really key to making water quality improvements on the lakes. The other thing that's protective of the lakes on the right is all that green is wetland. And wetlands are incredibly protective of water quality. Everything that flows through the wetlands is getting absorbed, the nutrients are getting taken up by all those plants. So having that whole wetland system above and through the lake system is really helpful to water quality in the lakes. The lakes vary in water quality. On the left, the more blue in the Secchi disc there, the better the water quality. And the upper left is water quality, upper right is the condition of the shoreland, the lower left is mercury, which everybody's yellow, and the lower right is invasives. So as we can see, rescue's the one with the invasives. The others have varying degrees. We have less data on Pauline just because it's a different kind of lake. You can't really see the center one because it's small, but all the black and there's a lot of little red dots around the lake, and that's all the development and impervious surfaces a lot of around the lakes. And there's a significant amount of that. These are developed lakes, so we deal with that and we have to contend with those issues. The one on the right is all your permits, all the permits you've applied for to get projects done on the lake. The invasive species permits are in there. All this is available online. You can find all of this data and look it up and see what's going on. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly to go into the LWAP, the Lake Watershed Action Plan, because she's leading that charge.
Thank you. And I'm short, so I'll stand. Not too bad. I guess you all can see me. As Marie mentioned, I'm Kelly Stetner. I live in Springfield, right down on the Black River, just about 2 miles before it hits the Connecticut River. I have 2 hats, fortunately not 2 heads yet, but the one hat that I do wear 30 hours a week is as the district manager for the Ottaquechee Natural Resources Conservation District. And the conservation districts were started in the 1930s as the soil conservation districts, originally in the wake of the Dust Bowl. They've expanded over time to be that connective tissue between private landowners, farmers, producers of all sorts, and those state and federal programs that can provide technical assistance and financial assistance. We're that non-regulatory connective tissue between the private landowners, as I said, and some of the resources that are out there. But the hat that I wear for this is Black River Action Team. It's a group that I started in my spare time from a day job 26 years ago, just cleaning garbage out of the Black River. And it has evolved. I have evolved it with a lot of help from Marie, guidance and so forth. Still is a part-time, only 10 hours a week roughly, but I still direct this entirely volunteer-fueled. I am the only person in the organization that actually gets any kind of money, and that's through grants and donations that I seek myself. Some of those grants are state grants, Tactical Basin Planning, for example, and a lot of them are private grants, Vermont Community Foundation, and so forth, Trout Unlimited. Grants that I seek to help me do projects, whether it's cleanups, whether it's water quality monitoring, many around the lakes, some of the tributaries. We also do, with the help of some volunteers, we also do bacteria monitoring for some of the swimming areas and all of the lakes now this year, thanks to sponsorships. We also do floodplain work, riverbank plantings, lakeshore improvement projects. If anybody's been around last year and saw some work on Benson Point, there were a couple of infiltration steps that were put in, some plantings going in there. I'm doing more work there. Look for us on Carpenter's Point Road in a couple of weeks, doing infiltration steps. And in 2023, we sent folks around. I had a couple of wonderful people helping. Kind of really leading the charge as the 3 horsemen, I guess. Leading the mud puppies, we sent folks around with shovels and buckets and PPE, and we were shoveling mud. We were helping folks try to deal with the initial impacts of the flooding and the sedimentation from the 2023 floods. And in the wake of that, to touch back on something that Penny had brought up, or in response to a question, in 2024, working with Dartmouth College and the Rural Rivers Program and Cavendish Connects, we started Culvert Crawlers, which is a very grassroots, volunteer-led community engagement, community science project to have individual homeowners, landowners, community members have a digital tool to go out and monitor and do light maintenance on those tertiary and secondary and tertiary culverts, whether it's driveway culverts, back road culverts, some of our East Lake Road. I don't know if you've seen us on social media. In the last couple of years, we had Dartmouth students out there doing a lot of this. Very much a pilot project, but now it's really starting to gain support around the state. We have different towns all around the state that are doing this now. And we're starting to do it as part of Green Up Day. So if anyone's interested in culvert crawlers, no, you don't actually have to crawl through a culvert. But it's a good way to get engaged with the stormwater in your neighborhood before storms, during droughts, and stay engaged with your town, the maintenance crews, the highway crews, town manager on, hey, you know what? This culvert on my street is not in good condition. Can you guys come take a good look at it? In addition to doing light maintenance, just don't blow your grass clippings into the ditch. That's a good simple way to help keep your ditches cleared and your culverts functioning. And the other thing that we do is also, I'm a member through BRAT I'm a member with the local long-term recovery group, Black River Valley Resources. I call it Braver. And we are looking into that longer-term recovery, not just the flood response, but how to interact with our town, how to get the towns to communicate with each other, because water flows downhill, especially if you're in a river or a stream system, like the lakes all are. What happens in Plymouth impacts the lakes of Ludlow, impacts what happens down below Buttermilk Falls and below Okemo Mountain and all the way down to the Connecticut River. So in the spirit of that connectivity, I am really pleased and excited to be part of the LWAP project that is coming up. It should be starting very, very shortly. And that would be with Fitzgerald Environmental. They are going to be they're the environmental consultants who are going to be doing the research on all of this. And essentially, I'm not going to read every single slide because I know we're a little behind time, and I hate when people read slides. So you can get the slide deck from Spencer after this. But essentially, it is a tool that is going to be put together over the course of a couple of years to not just map and survey, like the aerial photographs, et cetera, so forth, and use digital tools and look at records, but they're also, Fitzgerald is also going to be doing some ground truthing. They're going to be out there walking streams. They're going to be exploring some of the wetlands. We're going to be working with several community members and a couple members of the Lake Rescue Board to get the community members out on the water and understand how it's all connected. Not just the shoreline property owners, but also up into the hillsides. We love our lake properties. I grew up, part of my childhood was on a little lake in New Hampshire. We love our lakes because we value them. We value the scenic beauty, the aesthetic, meditative, relaxing vibe that you get being on a lakefront, having your morning cup of tea, looking at the sunrise and the fog lifting and the loons calling. We value that wildlife. We value the swimming, the recreation, the boating, the paddling, the fishing. There's so many cultural values that are inherent in our lakefront properties. This is why, we want to share them with our friends and families. We have the family reunion at the lakefront. We want to pass it on to our kids. And those values are what give it an economic value. That's what gives it the property dollar value that is so important. And if we're going to protect that property value, we have to protect the ecological values, the ecological function and health of our lakes. And that's where the water quality comes in. That's where the sediment, the milfoil. We've got to deal with those things because we want to protect that property value. We have to work together on that because the lakes, as Marie pointed out, they're all formed by the Black River. They're naturally large, deep areas of the Black River, but it's what happens upstream and uphill all impacts each lake in sequence. So working together around that common goal, and that hopefully speaks to the one person who mentioned about the Black River Valley, the upper Black River Valley, is that we're all connected in there hydrologically and ecologically. So that's enough of my notes. But essentially, each of these slides, again, you can get them electronically. The end product of all of the year or two, how do I, look at that, just hit enter. I can do that, I'm Wilma Flintstone. Yeah, we know that all the lakeshores are highly developed, but at the end of this couple of years of looking at development, where are the impacts coming from to our lakes? Where's the sediment coming from? Where's the nutrients coming from? You know, one pollutant is even warm water. Where is the warm water coming from? Once we start identifying what the problems are, we can start looking at the landscape, not just the shoreline, but up in those hills. Where could those impacts be coming from? Then we can start looking at how can we do some projects that will pragmatically deal with some of that impact. So looking at the whole watershed, a holistic approach. We're going to be looking for nutrients because that's what's feeding the milfoil. We're going to be looking at the shoreland. We're going to be looking at, some of you have had lake-wise assessments done. We're going to try to identify several parcels that have willing landowners and we can do lake-wise assessments. We will probably be looking at the stream-wise program as well, which will be, you know, if you have property that has a small stream on it, we can do a similar sort of, I think it's a little more rigorous to pass the stream-wise test. But we'll be looking at those streams, Kingdom Brook, Buffalo Brook, some of the unnamed tributaries that are coming in. We'll be looking at the roadways as well, of course, like East Lake Road, all the development up on the hillsides, and the wetlands that Marie mentioned. They will be prioritizing problem areas based on the impact that they're having for water quality, how effective a project is likely to be, and how much support. Like if you've got a landowner who's really excited, yes, I would love to do a project to manage such and such so that my property is not contributing sediment to the lake. If you get someone who's super excited and enthused, that'll be a that'll rank it up in the priority list. Ideally, we're going to come up with, I'm calling it a project matrix. I think I got that from you. And essentially, it's going to be a table of projects that we can do collectively as a community that will improve and protect the water quality of the lakes, protect our property values too. And that we can each, it'll have one column will be, this is something the state should do. This is something that maybe the town should look into doing. This is something that a lake association could do. This is something that a watershed group could do. Maybe it's a multi-year project that the Natural Resources Conservation District could do. But it'll have that list of who should be a partner in this and potentially where some of the funding could come from for it too. Let's see, and then this one slide is a little bit beyond me because it's a little bit more about the Vermont DEC methodology, but essentially that's why I'm not doing the LWAP process. That's why Fitzgerald Environmental is doing it, because they understand the DEC methodology. They will be taking the appropriate steps in the process to be doing all of this survey work, all of the report gathering, all of the crunching of the numbers. And this slide also indicates where some of their funding is coming from, which is great. This one's a little bit chewy, but it outlines that 2-year process for folks. So you really have a sense of, you know, I'm not hearing anything about the LWAP in summer of 2026. Well, there's a lot of desktop review that's going to be happening. They have to pull up reports, pull up maps, look at all the parcel information. And then because the land around the lakes, the land around the river, the land in the watershed is more than just parcel numbers, it's more than just span numbers, it's more than the grand list, it's human beings. And that's where I'm excited to be coming in, because I want to be maybe that connective tissue again between the process of this Lake Watershed Action Plan and you folks, the landowners, the lakeshore owners, the people who come up here whenever they get the opportunity to enjoy the lakeshore. And how can you interface with this that helps your property and helps the lakes in the long run? So that's where I really see my role on this. There'll be an internal team working on this with Fitzgerald Environmental nice and close. There'll be public meetings, there'll be feedback sessions, there's gonna be lots of public outreach around this as well. So there'll be the occasional boat tours. I think those will be not, everybody invite your friends, grab your favorite beverage, not that kind of a boat tour, but a little bit more of an assessment boat tour for folks who can help us target areas that we really want to look at more closely from the shoreline. We'll be exploring some of the wetlands, facilitating the field work, all the good stuff. And there are those two infiltration steps that I was talking about on Benson Point Road. If you're ever out on Round Pond, hang a left when you first get onto Round Pond, and you'll see these two infiltration steps right there on Benson Road. And so this just lists some of the projects that we may be identifying. That buffer planting. Buffer will be that vegetative strip on a shoreline that is full of native plants. It enriches the local habitat for wildlife, and it provides a windbreak. It provides stormwater capture. It provides for roots to help the soil be more absorbent and healthy so that we soak more water into the landscape rather than rushing it off of a tightly mowed lawn right into the lake, bringing, fertilizer, sediment, whatever else with it. Bioengineering erosion control. I'm going to be working on a shoreline stabilization project also on Benson Road. Hopefully that'll be getting started this year. Rain gardens, filter berms, all kinds of great activities to help capture stormwater and soak it into the landscape before it rushes off of those impervious surfaces, the roofs, the roads, even the tightly packed gravel parking areas. The rain will just rush right off of that. So we want to soak it in more. And then where can the association and members, community members help? Getting the word out to people, promoting participation. As I start putting things out on social media and in my email and hopefully in the newspapers, if I remember to actually send a print copy. If you guys can also help with promoting that information and disseminating it. And we want to connect with the other lake groups. And even if there aren't groups on Amherst and Echo, we want to encourage participation with landowners on Amherst and Echo because it's all connected. So, and helping the contractors, that would be Fitzgerald, to get in touch with those landowners. So you may get an email from me saying, hey, is it okay if I put you in touch with Joe from Fitzgerald? You might get an email, you might get a postcard. And then hopefully I'll be able to help coordinate with the town, but you guys as well, if you have connectivity with Penny beyond what I do, that would be great. And then these are some of the new monitoring sites on some of the different streams. We're looking at Patch Brook, we're looking at Buffalo Brook, Kingdom Brook. There's a little tributary that runs down East Lake Hill and goes under Ellison's Lake Road. I have to go there later and get my sample from there. There's several other small tributary streams that we're collecting samples from, basically looking for baseline data that the state can use to get a sense of, okay, well, this is what the phosphorus looks like, this is what the nitrogen looks like, and this is what the chloride looks like in a regular year for Kingdom Brook. And then in the next year, what does that look like? How does that relate to rainfall? And how does that relate to how much is coming down into the lake? Because we also do have lake monitors.
And Kelly, not to interrupt you, but just given that we're a little over time now for when we were calling to end this, is there I think what might be super helpful is as this continues, it'd be great to set something up and do a full debrief virtually on the LAP, because I think there's a ton of really great information here. But we're a potentially good, quick segue.
I'm actually ready to segue right now.
I was going to say, because I feel like you mentioned the brooks and the streams. I think that's a big question. That'd be great if we could do. That would be great.
So I get the fun part. And it really is Joe. When she said Joe from Fitzgerald, it's Joe. I'm not going to do the milfoil. You've cut that covered. So I know, certainly, I've been doing this job since 2005, so I've hit all the good floods. And I know it's an issue, and I want to address it as clearly as possible. So the first thing, you have to really think about is that we do not live in the world we lived in 50 years ago. This is not the same planet. We have whatever you want to call it. We have climate change. We have different things going on. And the biggest thing is the fact that New England now gets 60% more precipitation in every one of these events than we used to. That's a lot of rain. Every 1 inch, we now get an inch at 1.6 inches. So think about that in the capacity of what our streams are dealing with, what's happening on the landscape. This is a very steep watershed. This is not flat. We're not in the Lake Champlain Valley. We're in the mountains. And all that water is coming down at us. And as I said, you know, that's 100 square miles that's dumping into Lake Amherst first. And we know what the results of that is. We know what it looks like on the landscape after one of these events happens. These are all the 23 flood. I was also, you know, I've been here for Irene, I've been here for 2017, 2019, 2023. You know, we've had a lot of floods. We now get a 100-year flood every 9 years or so. So, you know, it's a little different. We got some issues. In the upper watershed of the Black, there are 18 brooks feeding that. Starting from the north, it's Tinker, Great Roaring, Money, Buffalo Kingdom, Patch, Tiny, and then 12. In between all of those, there's another 12 brooks that are feeding the Black River above these 4 lakes. This was sent to me by a resident at Red Bridge. This was even a number of years ago. This was just a normal storm, just a regular old rainstorm. Not a heavy rain, but all of that, even on a paved road, all of that sediment, all of that stuff, everything you don't want to step on the sidewalk, is going into the lakes in the river as it rains. So we have to deal with that. And it's not just one brook. It's 18 brooks. It's easy to point a finger and say this is our problem, and that's really not the case. We have 18 brooks coming at us here. Red Bridge Road, Patchbrook Road and the brook are contiguous. They're the same, pretty much the same thing at different elevations. You know, it's an issue. Kingdom Brook, everybody here knows what happens to Kingdom Brook and Kingdom Road after every single storm. Buffalo Brook, the same way. Old logging roads that are feeding the brook. Everything that comes down off those hillsides, whether it's forested or paved, is all heading towards the lakes. And that, Kelly got that picture of the mouth of Buffalo Brook after one of the last storms, which is crazy amount of sediment. And there's Money Brook, and that's the one that everybody likes to point the finger at. And as I say, it's not just Money Brook. Money Brook is an issue. It's a big, big problem. And it's been a problem since Tropical Storm Irene, when it mass failed. It's called a mass failure, that massive slump that's up there, rushed down the hill and wiped everything out below. If you tried to get through Route 100, there were, you know, bus-sized boulders in the middle of Route 100. And that's Pingree, on the right, that's Pingree Flats, the Pingree's property up there. And that was after Irene, after it got cleaned up, after Irene. So, you know, it's a problem. It's really, really difficult to get a concept of the scale of what is up Money Brook. These are after Irene. We went up and we measured all those boulders, trying to figure out how much power of the water that came down that stream and wiped everything out. The mass failure up there at its highest point now is 275 feet high and almost 900 feet long. I'm just going to be completely blunt and say there is nothing we can do about that. I disagree 100%. I'm sure a lot of people do. I'm going to finish this and we can have a conversation. I'm bringing you the perspective of where I stand 20 years into this. And it's not just me, of course, this is A&R's, this is what happens. We have tried, we have planted the lower slope, it's all gone. We have tried to manage the lower brook, it keeps getting wiped out. The thing that we have done, which I think has having the biggest impact, is conserving that floodplain, the Pingree Flats. We now have a river corridor easement, and if you've watched it over the years, it has transformed itself, with a lot of help from us, back into a wetland. And the water now doesn't just flow straight out of Moneybrook into the Black River. It now filters through a lot of that wetland, where that, if you walk out there, it's very deep in sediment. It's capturing a lot of sediment. All the plants have come back, which are absorbing those nutrients. So that, that's the biggest thing we could do. That's actually something that's working to help the lakes. As I said, it's not just Moneybrook. Moneybrook is up there at the top left, and all that green is wetland from Moneybrook down to the head of Lake Amherst. And all those wetlands are doing that function. They're capturing sediment, they're filtering out the nutrients from the water, they're filtering out the sediments that are coming out of Moneybrook and making their way into Amherst. And as the previous picture showed, there's still a lot of sediment coming down, but there's also a number of brooks north of Moneybrook that are contributing to that. So Moneybrook is an issue, it's a big problem, but it's not the only problem. And though all those wetlands are really helping the situation. Once you hit Amherst, all those fine sediments, it's unlikely that anything but the really fine sediments are making their way all the way through Amherst, all the way through Echo, into Round Pond, Rescue, and Pauline. So as the farther south you get through that lake system, the less Moneybrook is impacting. This is everything that we have done since 2011 was Irene. We've been working with this association since I started in 2005 and previously to that. These are all the projects we've done, and the partners, LRA, the Regional Planning Commission, the Town of Ludlow, the Vermont River Conservancy, other environmental organizations, even Two Rivers Regional Planning Commission, to the point, in that 20 years, we've sent $466,000 in the Upper Black River watershed, trying to deal with the issues here. So the state is committed to helping and working on this. It's definitely a water quality problem that affects everybody, and we are trying to work on it and help. There's other things that need to get looked at as well. Other sources that are hitting the river. There's stormwater all through the watersheds. The upper left is illegal ATV use in our forests that create ruts and gullies and all kinds of fun things that end up in the streams. There's the lower left is a big algal bloom that you had in, I think it was the mouth of, in Echo, just because it was warm and lots of nutrients, and so we haven't hit the, thank goodness, cyanobacteria toxic algal blooms, but we already have algal blooms happening, and obviously road runoff that leads to, the streams and the culverts that do lead to the lake eventually. We all love these lakes. I live in Reading, so I'm a local, and this, if you remember this was a few years ago at Red Bridge Road. It was really fun. I think everybody agrees that these lakes are really invaluable to us locals and to everybody who comes here. The water quality is really important to everybody here, everybody downstream, all the way to Connecticut. This is part of the Connecticut River watershed. And I know it's frustrating and it's taking a long time, and we invest a lot of time and energy in it. And what it's going to take is looking at the whole picture and looking at your own backyard. So that's part of why the LWAP is happening, because we need everyone to participate, kind of the all-in attitude, if we're going to make the differences that are going to clean up the watershed, clean up the lakes, and all the way downstream. Please participate in the LWAP. Please participate in the lake-wise assessments of your own properties. None of this is regulatory, right? We cannot come in and say, this has been identified in your backyard, you have to do this. All of it is voluntary. So we're trying to get the information to make everyone aware of what can happen, what do we need to do on the landscape on a broad scale on all of these brooks, in all of the lakes, to ultimately improve conditions as we go forward. So I ask that you work with the association, work with Kelly, and with the town to make sure that this actually happens on the ground, because I write plans, and the last thing I want is for those plans to sit on a shelf and get ignored for the next 5 years until I write a new one. You know, this is an active process, and as I said, I'm starting this basin again later this month to start a new plan. I get to do them every 5 years, which is a crazy short amount of time. But it also keeps it active, and it keeps refreshing what's going on and what needs to get done next. So I hope you'll participate in those. This is all of us, and it is Joe, who works for Fitzgerald Environmental, who's going to be the lead contractor on this project. And I anticipate questions.
Let's open it up. Yeah, grab the mic so everybody can hear
you. I'm Tom Harris, longtime resident of Plymouth, Vermont. Since 2011, my wife Patty and I have owned a house on Lake Rescue. I watched firsthand the flooding from Tropical Storm Irene in 2011 and the 2023 flood, and participated in the cleanup and recovery thereafter. The Black River starts in Plymouth at Black Pond as a clear, pristine mountain stream, picks up several tributaries before entering Amherst and Plymouth, and eventually flows into Lake Rescue and Pauline. Correct terminology, this is Headwaters Black River HUC-12 watershed. Flooding is a natural phenomenon we cannot change. The water will always rise and fall. Muddy Brook enters the watershed 1 mile south of Plymouth Union during TS Irene in the 2023 flood, and quite often during heavy rains like the one in June. Large cliffs high up Muddy Brook collapsing, causing a great deal of large brown sediment to foul up our entire HUC-12 watershed, turning our lakes turbid brown. The source of the turbidity, as you said, is a massive slope failure along Muddy Brook, causing a mix of sand, silt, clay, boulders, and cobbles to rush downhill and wreak havoc. Some of us in Plymouth have been working for a long time to see if there's a way to stop this erosion from fouling up our lakes and streams. There very well may be. It will be a large, difficult, expensive project. In 2025, at the request of Plymouth, the USDA NRCS Watershed Operations Program published a preliminary investigations finding report, Headwaters Black River Watershed, Amherst and Muddy Brook. I have provided the leadership of Lake Rescue Association with a copy. It details the problem, specifically Muddy Brook, and proposes several solutions ranging from minimal non-structural to no restrictions structural. Their conclusion was that it may be possible to fix. The good news is it's estimated not to exceed $25 million. Currently in Plymouth, we are pursuing several next steps to get the process started, including meeting with our state USDA representative and requesting funding in the next study in a current bill headed for Congress. The next step is an engineering feasibility study, possibly with the same people you're talking about, which determine which project works best with cost estimates, etc. Herein lies a problem we have. Any alternative to fix this, which receives federal funding, will have to be sponsored by the town of Plymouth, okay, and supervised at the town level. And all the grants we are applying for will require a 25% local match. Yes. Okay? Plymouth is a small town of only 641 residents and very limited resources. If we get approved for the engineering study and then go to the final project, along the way, we're going to need everyone's help monetarily. I hope that the Lake Rescue Association and their individual members will be prepared to contribute and believe the towns downriver and the state, in fact, have a high stake in this and should as well. And if a miracle happens and some individual or group listening wants to fund the entire process, that would greatly reduce the cost, streamline the project, and accelerate the expected completion. We in Plymouth welcome all interested parties to enter in the dialogue to get this fixed.
Thank you. I really appreciate you stating, though, that whole thing. When I say there's nothing we can do, that's a financial statement, right? If the funding can be found, and so it's a funding issue above everything else, right? It's also the access issue, you know, how do you get heavy equipment, big heavy equipment, up that slope into, of course it can be done. That in itself is probably a multi-million-dollar project, because getting things up there. So I agree with everything you just said, that there are possibilities. If anyone can come up with the funding to do that, it is not in the capacity of the Agency of Natural Resources.
Next question.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Barb Silver. I own a property at the east end of Lake Rescue in Archibald Cove. Closer. Oh.
Perfect.
As you all know, one of the hardest hit areas when there is flood is East Lake Road, right at that end of the lake. The road washes out, Archibald Lane washes out, the homes get flooded, everything goes into the lake. It's awful. Yep. And I and many others, I think, are concerned, maybe even alarmed, that it looks like there's development happening directly above that area, directly above my house, actually. And there's a lot of clear cutting. I don't know the details of what's happening, but it's surprising to me that the town is allowing one of the hardest hit parts of the lake to allow development just above that, and what the runoff situation could possibly look like.
You want to take that one?
Thank you for that question. I will gladly take that. That landowner has been issued a stop order by our planning and zoning department, and the state has come in and has issued very stringent requirements of that landowner. And so it is now a state to private landowner issue. I'm not going to go into the specifics of what they have done so far, but we have taken note of that, and we have brought the state in, and now the state is involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. And I will emphasize that I am not one of the regulators. I am not enforcement, so I can't address anything further on that. I don't know the situation, so.
Hi, Carrie Finizio. I'm on Round Pond. Really granular question, but as a homeowner on a lakefront property, how do we find out what plants are good to plant on our lakeside?
You want to do that? I like ones I don't have to answer.
I like easy questions. There are plenty of lists that I can share with you. There are databases full of native Vermont plants, what the best soil is, what the best, thank you very much. Yes, lots and lots of resources I can get to you online. There's rain garden manuals with full plant lists. My big problem has been, or my big challenge until recently has been, here's the huge list of plants, where do you buy them? I go to my local nursery in Springfield and they've got 50 different ground covers. They're from Africa, they're from Europe, they're from Asia. I need to find local greenhouses that either carry them or can get them. So to that end, I've been starting to work with Reading Greenhouse. Last year I did a planting project and said, look, this is what I need. Can you get them? It took a little longer, but they got them all for me, and I planted native plants. I'm also working in an additional capacity to try to collect those seeds locally of native plants and propagate them locally so we don't have to go buy them from a nursery. So, project in process.
And I'll just add, because Kelly is absolutely right, on our website, we have created a booklet, a waterfront landscaping booklet. It includes planting plans for all different kinds of properties, different slopes, and it has resources and sources, probably including the ones that Kelly mentioned in the back, where you can find native plants and so forth. But the planting plans are really nice, as well as a long list of native plants. So like, what do you look for? There's the list. So that's on our website. You can download it, or just send us an email and we can get you a print copy.
I did put a small stack of my business cards out on the table, so if somebody wants to email me, I can certainly zip you back some resources, and highly recommend starting with Reading Greenhouse, because they already know I'm trying to demand more stuff, more local natives, but also start pestering your local nursery. If there's a nursery that you like to use, and just say, this is my list, I want natives. I want to start changing that market. So as they start seeing the demand for the local natives, they'll start going, oh, well, we don't want to keep selling burning bush or Japanese barberry. We want to, do these other native plants that people want. So,
Always check just Google the plant and make sure it's a native, because a lot of nurseries sell non-natives and the people who help you don't necessarily know. And the state has resources on their sites too. So, and if you need, call Gigi, I'll help you if you need help with that. Okay.
But I think there's also, I'm noting down here, this is an action item for the Lake Rescue Association to compile these resources and make it easily accessible to all of you on our website and our social media platforms. Noted.
Yes, hello. My name is Lisa Wingate Geisler. Can everyone hear? Lisa Wingate Geisler. My mom lives on Lake Rescue full-time. And my question actually is for Penny. Back at the beginning, I should know the answer to this question, but the locations of dams 1, 2, 3, and 5? What did I... You want the locations? Yeah, I can pull it up.
Thank you for the question. The locations of Dam 1 is right off of 100 South, as just before you make that final climb up Terrible Mountain. It's on the right-hand side if you're heading south on 100. If you were to go out that road, at the end of the road, it's locally known as Raybos, because that's where the Raybos used to own that house out there, but it is Dam 2. Dam 3 is West Hill Dam, that is here in town. And then Dam 5, Fifth Dam, if you know Ludlow and you continue up, not the access road, but you go past West Hill, if you were to go toward Trailside, but not go up to Trailside, you continue straight, it's a dead end, and you walk out there, and Fifth Dam is out there. So those are the fourth, Dam 4 is elusive, so it's...
Penny,
Isn't that like a big culvert somewhere?
this question is for you. Linda Thompson, permanent resident of Lake Pauline. Okay, I'm kissing it now.
Wait till later.
Whoa!
No, sorry. I just...
Hey now.
A little levity here.
At the southern end of Lake Pauline, on the west side, there is a steel structure that looks like it would let water out to lower the lake levels. When I mentioned it to Brendan, he didn't even know it existed. So since the state calls that reservoir pond, maybe that's your missing fourth reservoir. And that could, like last week when you let water out of the other reservoirs in preparation for a possible flooding event, perhaps this, I don't know if it could even be raised anymore. It's been in there for decades. But that's what it looks like it was there for, to raise up so more water could flow through there and lower the lake in preparation for a possible storm. It certainly was not done in Hurricane Irene or in 2023.
Thank you, Linda. That goes back to the whole conversation of ensuring that when we are preparing and planning, that we understand where all of our infrastructure assets are and how do we manage those leading up to, say, 72 hours out, 48 hours out, 24 hours out from an incident. And so that plays directly into the planning for that. So thank you for that, and maybe it is. So start your blog on where that elusive fourth dam may be. If I can just take a minute to go back to, I believe you were talking about 478 East Lake Road development that has occurred. I think that's the one. So we were very shocked to find that piece of property had been, it's about 10 acres. Much of it was, a lot of the vegetation was removed. And then when we discovered it, a foundation looked like it was being prepared for concrete. That's when we got involved. That's when we issued a violation notice, a stop construction order. And we brought in the state, as I referred to, construction industrial section of the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources, Department of Environmental Conservation. So that is the agency branch that is involved with that developing, private development that's occurring right now.
So was a permit issued for them to start clearing?
We did not issue a permit for that. So that's kind of the crux of the issue, so. Thank you.
Penny, this is a follow-on question here. What is the best way, because there are so many residents very vigilant. If we see something, there is a form on DCR. How can we report? Because this should have not gone. 10 acres shouldn't have been cleared before everyone took notice.
Right, correct. So call the office during the office hours and ask to speak to planning and zoning.
Okay.
If you see that type of development happening. Yes, yep. We do.
Let's do one more question. Sorry. Then we'll.
Let me just add that if you see things happening on the landscape that are environmental concerns, you can report it directly to the Agency of Natural Resources. If you just go to A&R, there's a link on there that says report a violation, and you can do that anonymously online if you don't want to, be responsible for telling on your neighbor. You can do it anonymously as well. And one of our enforcement officers has to go out and take a look at it.
Okay. Mine's really quick. I just want to know what to do with the milfoil when we pick it up on our kayaks, or if we do some hand pulling.
I put mine in a garbage can, and it is, you can throw it away in your garbage, you can throw it up in your woods in a high spot. Once it dries out, it no longer is viable, and it won't start a new plant if it really dries out well. The transfer station, they take milfoil that we have and throw it in their compost pile, so you can compost it. Those are a couple options of what you can do with it. Don't bother putting it in a salad. It doesn't taste very good.
It's nutrient rich. You could put it in your garden beds just as long as it's, I think, 12 feet from the shoreline.
You ready?
do it.
Okay, Amy Braddock, I live on Carpenter's Point. The comment about being prepared, it does take a village. We've happened to have been up on the lake when these floods have happened, and we get calls from, my boat has gone loose, can you please go rescue it and store and tie it up somewhere before it goes over the dam? We've rescued people's dock pieces before they go over the edge, but it does take move people's cars up out of flood zones and up onto higher land. Is there any type of website area where people can other than the Lake Rescue Facebook page, where people, if they have a need, could post it? I mean, obviously people shouldn't be doing things if it's not safe to go out and do it, but there's sometimes that you have people who have needs, and it does take a village, and there's people who might have a need, like when people got cut off, there was people kayaking baby supplies across the lake and things like that. But it doesn't, if you're limited, if you're new, if you don't know a lot of people on the lake, people are happy to help out. Is there some place that there can be like a community section where people have specific needs that they can put that up?
Okay.
I mean, I think we're interested in ideas, but quite honestly, the best forums are the commercial grade social media platforms. So Facebook and Instagram are kind of standards, and because they're commercial applications, I think we can rely on them more easily than anything that we could build as a volunteer organization. I work in technology myself, but I don't think we could feasibly build anything that's more effective than Facebook or Instagram. But I think we'd be willing to entertain ideas if there are.
My second part, and this seems really petty after all the important issues we've talked about today, but since the serenity of the lake is a big draw to the lake, I don't know if the Lake Rescue Association is interested in just putting common courtesy things. We're at a day and an age where nobody needs to have a light on at their house right on the lake 24/7. There's such things as, lights that are motion detector, and so you can still be safe, but have a motion detector light. But now we're getting things like a great big yellow landing strip that are, I have two concerns about. One, it's just an eyesore. Two, it's just a huge thing on the lake. It's like 20 feet by 40 feet. But then I also have questions too, how much heat is being trapped underneath this thing, increasing water temperatures, fostering milfoil growth, and other things like that. And I don't know if there's any regulations on that whatsoever, but it's a little bit alarming because once one person does it, how many more 40-foot by 20-foot at minimum this thing is? Type structures are going to end up all over our lakeshore.
Amy, I would call those neighbors, because when I've had floodlights that are visible to me during migratory times for birds, it's really disruptive to their patterns, and I explain that and people turn off their lights. I find, look, let's all be good neighbors, and let's remember that we're not the center of the universe. The lake is, okay? So call your neighbor and just ask them. We'll find him. Okay, whoever you are, turn your lights off.
Okay, so I think the light was like directly across from you.
Yep.
And I went over there, and that there were painters. The place was empty. I think it was sold, and the people had moved out. And there were painters in there, painting the whole interior. And they had turned it on and didn't realize it, and they turned it off.
There's one that's on across the lake from us that's been on since we bought the place.
It's still.
Yeah.
Okay, I
do
don't know
think
about that one.
Natalie will find them.
I can't see them, so.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges, right, is we can't regulate, right? No, I know you do that, and but I do think there's a couple things. Like one, the first thing you said. So anybody who doesn't have social media can email the Lake Rescue Association email. Natalie monitors that pretty regularly, and then we can post that on the Facebook and Instagram on behalf of somebody if they lose something or need help, for sure. So I think it's probably our email, and then social media seems to be the fastest way to get people to come and help. But I do think, what we can try to do as a group is come up with kind of a new, there's a new, on our new website, there'll be a whole rental portion of information geared towards renters. Because there are a lot of people who rent who don't know that they need to turn the lights off, or they don't know that they can't, do wake sports or be out at 7 in the morning water skiing, things like that. And so we are going to rebuild a page that's dedicated to that. And we hope that everybody who does rent their house out will point people to that space. We could also probably resurrect. There were some guidelines at one point. I think I still have one at the house of, when you can boat, there's light pollution commentary, there's things like that, and we can put some best practices out there. But I do think, because it's not something we can regulate, I do think just sending a message to someone, I would imagine, hopefully, 9 times out of 10, that person will not realize that it was on or realize kind of what the effect was. So I think it's a great point, and I think we can all try to help support each other in a different way. Okay, with that, thank you all for bearing with us when we went over time. I think this is great. This is incredibly helpful information. We've got one more piece of business we have to do in terms of board renewals, but in terms of next steps, I think we'll try to set up something virtually to go through the LWAP in greater detail after things have kicked off with you guys. Continue to funnel questions to us. We're happy to, if everyone has more questions for this group, we can set up a separate meeting to do that. We will, on our new site, have more dedicated resource space for all the documents that people shared today. With that, I'll pass to you, Rick.
Yeah, so just real quickly, the housekeeping, our bylaws provide for 9 board members and require some diversity between residents and non-residents and among the various lakes. Everybody serves for 3 years from when they're elected. We are nominating 3 people this year, Natalie, Spencer, and George, all of whom are here, so we'll be coming up again. So this is the opportunity where the chair entertains any nominations from the floor.
We're all here, so I think we could decline if we chose.
Yeah, so that being the case, Spence, you can accept the nominations by acclamation, and we're done.
Yes. Great, yes.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
All right.
I think the last note we can just fire to the last page, not even the looking ahead. Let's go to one more of those. I think the key piece here, and I again really do appreciate everybody sticking around here. The best thing that we can do is to get more people to volunteer and get involved. There are subcommittees for events, there's subcommittees for membership, there's subcommittees for milfoil. The more people can spend some time and offer, hey, I can do an hour a month, whatever it ends up being, the more people who get involved, the better we will certainly be. I think the middle bucket here is really critical. We haven't done a big fundraiser since the fall of 2020. That was incredibly successful. I think as a group we raised about $400,000, which funded our dredging project of 2 years ago. We have tried to not consistently go out and ask for significant numbers, but to the point, I think it was Tom. It was Tom, right, who spoke earlier? I think there's clearly a need for us to be fundraising and to be building funds to take care of a lot of the projects that will come out of the LWAP. So we will probably be launching some sort of a specific fundraiser, but again, anything that we can do to raise money to support this, it is all. Not all, mostly coming out of homeowners' pockets, so we appreciate everybody's help. And the last takeaway that I forgot on my list here is, in Penny, maybe we can work with you and Tom and Plymouth. I think there's a need for a meeting between Ludlow, Plymouth, the association, and anyone on the Plymouth side that could meet as well to try to talk about how we can at least be a group and approach any findings together, whether we can raise the money or not. I think it may, the powers collected might be better to go to the state with asks and ideas if we pool our resources. So we will take that as a task too.
Great, and I'm going to tell you, on your way out, there are gifts out there. There's handouts, please pick them up. There's buoys that you can take. There's some nets that you can take.
Oh, anyone who ordered a burgee, Burgee's a flag for your boat. They're beautiful. Barb did a great job designing this. Careful, Barb. Anyone who ordered one of these can come pick them up. There was a pre-order. I do have a list. And if anyone's interested, we could explore a repurchase. But all that said, is there a motion to adjourn?
Oh, all over the place.
Please, one at a time. All right, second.
And if you haven't bought, if you missed out on ordering your new summer merch, we reopened the shop to order by tomorrow at midnight.
Okay,
Thank you,
I know we're
everybody.
adjourned, but we need your volunteerism. We need you guys. We're not going to be better than we are today unless more of you join. The brigade. The brigade. Yes.
Go enjoy the lake.